In the north of the planet, there is an island that breathes. Her breath rises from the fire she holds within, and her skin is covered in ice. Within her, the Earth still remembers its own origin. Beneath the surface, invisible forces relentlessly shape it. The ground trembles, steam rises from open crevasses, and glaciers slowly advance, carving the landscape. The cold dominates, but the warmth is never far away. This is Iceland, a land suspended between extremes where the planet is still throbbing with life. Every mountain is a fresh wound, and every valley holds the memory of fire. In this young landscape, time seems to be measured by the pulse of the earth. Winter blankets the plains, and the rivers freeze beneath the ice. The wind sets its rhythm, erasing all traces of the previous day. However, something is moving among the frost. In the white silence, small footprints cross the snow. They are signs of existence, moving cautiously, creatures that have made the cold their refuge and survive in a cycle of resistance that never ends. Nothing here grows quickly or wastes energy. In this landscape, life doesn't flourish, it sustains itself. It moves slowly, with the caution of one who cannot afford a mistake. Every breath has a purpose. Every movement is a decision. Survival depends not on strength, but on patience and memory. And that struggle is not a solitary one. Where one life endures, another lurks. Everywhere, life observes, calculates, and tenses at the slightest movement. It is a world of fragile equilibrium, where an instant can separate calm from violence, stillness from attack. Among all those creatures, one survives where almost no other could. Small, silent, and solitary, it moves through the snow without leaving a trace. Learn to hunt in a territory where there are almost no signs of life, and to rest where the wind never stops. In this land that never rests, that tiny inhabitant represents the resilience of winter. It is the guardian of the frost, the living embodiment of perseverance. But how can life be sustained in a place where everything seems intent on erasing it? The Arctic fox moves through the snow like a persistent thought. It doesn't need to hide because the landscape itself protects it. Its fur blends in with the frost, and its breath barely raises a cloud that the wind quickly erases. The cold is not an obstacle, it is his natural environment. Iceland sets its own pace, and he follows it without resistance. The story of adaptation is written on her body. Every detail has a purpose. Its short ears retain the heat the wind tries to steal away. Its limbs, covered in a thick coat of fur, allow it to move across the snow without sinking, distributing its weight precisely, as if each step were measured by instinct. As it moves forward, its short, robust snout cuts through the icy air in search of invisible signs. Each inhalation measures the environment, and each exhalation saves energy in a place where even breathing has a cost. And it is now, during the winter, that its fur reaches an extraordinary density, with more than 2,000 hairs per square centimeter. That thermal armor insulates him even at temperatures of 40 degrees below zero, and allows him to move when the rest of the world stops, hunting and exploring amidst the frozen silence. Each of the Arctic fox's traits tells a story of more than just resilience. They are the result of an ancient past, a journey that began when ice joined continents and when Iceland was still connected to Greenland by ice bridges and floating ice flows. He was the first to arrive in these lands, the only land mammal to do so on his own, thousands of years ago. But that journey did not end. His journey continues every winter, repeated in every step, in every hunt, in every silence that the snow holds. Since then, he has learned to hear the invisible. He moves silently, perceives what others cannot hear, and can wait motionless until the ice reveals the slightest hint of life beneath the surface. Here, where silence reigns, every sound becomes a coordinate, a brief promise that decides whether one will live another day or succumb to hunger. When the wind dies down and the world seems to stand still, the fox's hearing sharpens. Immobility is not stillness, it is waiting. Every muscle holds an intention, then it stops. The head turns slightly to one side. The The whole body freezes. Beneath her body, the snow changes texture and breaks its silence. An almost imperceptible sound, a slight tremor, betrays something moving beneath the surface. He doesn't see it, but he senses it. The sound beneath the snow becomes form, and the form direction. His hearing detects the movement of a mouse at a depth of more than half a meter and translates it into a map that only he can read. She arches her back, calculates the exact spot, and jumps. Her body tenses for an instant in the air before plunging down. The snow opens with a dry crack and the silence is broken. A brief squeal emerges from the white background, quickly drowned out. Life fades as fast as it was detected. The fox pokes out its frost-covered snout. Between its teeth, the small rodent is still trembling. Then it shakes itself with a brief movement, and the snow comes loose in a light cloud that dissolves over its back. Then he raises his head and sniffs the air. He looks to both sides, alert. The wind carries old scents, signs of other hunters. Wait a few seconds until everything is still again. Only then does it move forward. There is no fury in its gesture, no pride in the capture. The predator does not celebrate. It fulfills its duty. This is their perception, a reading of the environment that does not require eyes. Because the world does not present itself to him as a landscape, but as a constant vibration. The wind, the creaking of the ice, and the changing texture of the air surround him like a silent language to which he responds with an ancient precision, as natural as the environment itself. During the brief Icelandic day, he travels through his territory with the confidence of a cartographer who doesn't need a map. He knows where the ice breaks, where the wind swirls, and where the crows leave the remains of their feasts. Nothing in their gait is random. Each step seems to follow an invisible pattern, a routine dictated by the landscape itself. That same sensitivity that guides his movements also allows him to anticipate changes in the environment. When the weather changes, your body senses it long before the storm arrives. The wind alters its tone, and the air pressure warns you of what's coming. Then it adjusts its course with the same calm with which it traverses its territory. The blizzard may erase its tracks, but never its orientation. In the white tundra, where everything seems the same, the balance between instinct and environment decides every step. There, the fox does not predict the changes, it senses them, incorporates them, and makes them part of its movement. But not everything in this territory belongs to him. The wind changes direction and carries a scent that isn't his, a heavy, dense smell that announces the presence of others. Far away, a crunch of snow repeats rhythmically, and then another one. It's not just one, it's a whole pack. The fox stops and raises its snout, scanning the air. It has no cover, and the terrain is open with no possible refuge. If he runs, his movement will give him away, but if he waits too long, the wind might shift and carry his scent toward them. Every second becomes a choice. In a single movement, he flattens himself against the ground and his body melts into the snow. The white envelops and conceals him. Only his eyes remain open, alert, fixed on the horizon. The herd moves slowly, their steps are muffled, the air vibrates with their weight. The fox is not breathing, and the wind, fortunately, is blowing in its favor. The currents carry their scent in the opposite direction, concealing it among swirls of snow. The wolves cross the plain, and for a few moments the world seems to hold its breath. When the danger passes, the fox raises its head. The wolves are now indistinct shadows moving down the hill in search of larger prey. For a moment the silence is complete once more. In this territory, even among predators, hierarchy prevails. The wolves wouldn't hunt him out of hunger, but for dominance, and their instinct understands this without needing to see him. Every encounter leaves a mark, even if there's no blood. In Iceland, survival depends not only on hunger or cold, but also on silence, on knowing the precise moment to disappear. But what happens when the silence is broken? and the hunt begins. Who then controls the noise of winter? The same footsteps the fox heard in the distance now return as a presence. First, there is a tremor beneath the snow, then comes the crunching sound. They are the wolves spread out across the plain, advancing with a precision that the landscape seems to obey. Where stillness once reigned, now everything moves to the rhythm of the hunt. The herd moves across the tundra orderly and without need for signals. Each individual occupies its place. The leader sets the pace, the young females flank the perimeter, and the older ones watch, attentive to every turn of the air. The march follows a single line. The first one breaks ground through the deep snow, and the others follow in his tracks. This is how they conserve energy and maintain their course, moving forward for hours without stopping. Each body supports the other, and together they become a single moving force. They are built to withstand that effort. Their limbs, covered by a thick coat of fur, insulate them from contact with the ice and distribute their weight so that nothing sinks. The pads, hardened by the cold and protected by a thick layer of skin, retain heat even when the surface reaches temperatures that would freeze any other form of life. As they advance, the rhythm remains constant. Each step follows the previous one with a precision that seems rehearsed. They form a perfect trail that cuts through the target like a continuous breath. There is no disorder or haste, only precise coordination that transforms individual effort into collective strength. In the Icelandic tundra, solitude is a risk. But togetherness here is a strategy. No wolf can survive alone. In these open lands, prey is scarce and the distance immense. Hunting alone would mean starving to death. Only in a group can they take down larger animals, share the effort, and survive the winter. Their advance leaves a line of footprints that fades into the distance, and the icy air carries each breath like a pulse that spreads across the plain. That's when something changes. The wind barely shifts, and a faint, almost imperceptible trail drifts through its currents. The herd stops. No order is needed. Everyone perceives the same thing. There's a smell that betrays recent life, and a few meters ahead the snow shows a deep, fresh track of a large dam that crossed the valley. For a moment, everything remains still, and then the group resumes its advance, determined and silent. Two wolves move to the sides, others barely advance, cutting the invisible path that the air marks between the prey and the refuge. The tension mounts. The landscape seems still, but something shifts. Far away, a silhouette raises its head, an alert reindeer. From a distance, the pack watches him. The animal hesitates, sniffs the air, and suddenly his eyes meet those of the wolves. The tension breaks. The reindeer's body arches and its muscles explode in flight. That is the signal. The leader tilts his head. There is no sound or command, only a shared impulse. The first one moves forward and the others respond as the ice crunches under his weight and the tundra ignites in a precise movement. There is no fury, only rhythm. Each wolf takes its place, guided by a memory older than the cold. The prey runs while the snow hits its flanks and its strides become clumsy. The pack doesn't pursue her head-on, it surrounds her. Two wolves flank her, others block her escape routes. They're not looking for speed, they're looking to wear her down. With each turn, the circle gets a little narrower. Minutes pass, and the air vibrates with gasps over a ground marked by furrows that multiply. The reindeer tries to break through the enclosure, but the terrain betrays him. The deep snow absorbs his momentum. The wolves keep the rhythm, alternating positions so as not to exhaust their energy in a choreography born of necessity. The reindeer stumbles, gets back up and runs again, but there is no longer any direction, only flight. Each breath is a wisp of vapor that the wind disperses as the herd speeds forward. The sound of the ice mixes with the patter of the legs and the distance gradually shortens. Finally, the reindeer's body gives way. There is no roar or cry, only the thud of the fall and the silence that once again fills everything. The wolves stop. They remain still, attentive, as if listening to the cold before approaching. Then they advance, slowly, gauging the air and ensuring that nothing is moving around before claiming their prey. The silence is total, barely interrupted by the faint crunch of the snow when the leader takes the first step towards the body. Soon the others gather. No one rushes. Each takes their place, guided by an order that needs no reminder. They eat sparingly, not out of immediate hunger but out of instinct, with the certainty that the winter will be long and the cold will preserve what remains. The snow will soon cover the remains, keeping them under a white layer until they are needed again. When the wind changes direction, the pack stops. Silence returns as naturally as the hunt came. Only the footprints remain, and the vapor that still rises in the icy air, slowly dissolving among the snowflakes. The cold doesn't stop. It spreads over everything that remains and preserves the shape of the moment, as if time itself were trapped in the snow. Nothing is wasted because in the tundra every death feeds a life and every return begins in silence. Gradually the wind erases the tracks and the landscape regains its calm. The tundra remains motionless, suspended in its own silence until the last echo of the hunt dissolves into the icy air. But just when the stillness seems permanent, something stirs beyond the horizon. Night falls, and what lies dormant beneath the ice begins to awaken. In this world that changes with the darkness, who will be the hunter now? Darkness descends silently. On the horizon, the last hues of sunset fade behind the mountains, and the air thickens until it becomes still. Far from the plains, the forests sink into a dense gloom. Among the frost-covered trunks, the wind barely dares to enter. Stillness settles over the wood and moss like an ancient shroud. Beneath that icy blanket, other lives awaken. Small bodies slither among roots and hardened leaves, searching for food in the shade. Here, the night is no longer the domain of the wolves. It belongs to those who know how to move without being seen. Amidst the frost and lichen, a tiny shadow cautiously glides. It is an Icelandic field mouse, one of the few creatures that has made darkness its ally. Its fur, with its dark, matte tones, absorbs the pale light of the moon, making it almost invisible. Every fiber of its body seems made to go unnoticed, to move without leaving a trace among the damp roots. It weighs only a few grams, and yet its life hangs on every movement, but that fragility is not weakness, it is instinct. Because despite his size, he has learned to read the ground like others remember a path in the snow. He knows the terrain by heart, and every root, every stone, and every crack is part of his personal map. It only comes out when the air stabilizes and the wind blows from the north, because it recognizes that in that direction the smell does not travel far. Their perception is not measured by distance, but by details, by a creak, a shadow that doesn't fit, or a smell that doesn't belong. Guided by that constant attention during the night, it moves through the snow in search of food. It finds remnants of hardened moss, dried seeds, fragments that it carefully holds and brings to its mouth with a delicacy born of necessity. With each step he takes, his movements slow. He stops when the air shifts and the silence seems too perfect, because in the frozen forest even stillness can conceal danger. Winter has taught him that daytime is hostile territory, a time when foxes prowl among the frost, weasels slink under the snow, and crows watch from above, alert to any movement. That is why it has learned to survive on the margins, waiting for the sun to go out and the temperature to drop below zero. Only then, when the larger creatures rest or hide, does the field mouse emerge from the snow and dare to move. That is its pact with the darkness. But in Iceland, darkness also has eyes. High above, among the twisted trunks of a small forest that barely survives the wind, a snowy owl silently observes. Two yellow orbs, motionless, rotate with absolute precision. The bird settles on a frost-covered branch and watches the ground. Its broad, white body blends in with the snow, and it doesn't need to hide because the night does it for it. In the darkness, a faint sound breaks the silence. The owl lowers its head and fixes its gaze, then swoops down. Below, the mouse ventures a few meters beyond its refuge. It carries with it a fragment of seed, an offering for the young waiting underground. It is unaware that danger has already found it. The owl calculates the distance, adjusts its body, and in the blink of an eye, the air explodes in a perfect descent. The impact is immediate. The snow rises and the silence is broken for an instant, but the dam is not there. The mouse, at the last second, slipped under a layer of ice, hidden in a hollow where sound changes direction. The owl spreads its empty talons across the white surface and turns its head, bewildered for a moment. The sound has deceived it, deflected by the ice and the wind. Now it hovers, gauging the air. The wind shifts, blowing from the north and clearing the space of confusing echoes. Beneath it, the forest stretches out in long shadows and the snow reflects a faint glow. The bird drifts with the current, turning slowly. There's no rush, and hunger doesn't govern its flight. In Iceland, waiting is also a form of hunting. The air thickens around the owl. It remains perched on a frost-covered branch, motionless, its wings folded against its body. Every feather reads the wind. Every muscle awaits the signal that has yet to arrive. Nothing moves. The forest, the ice, and the horizon seem to hold their breath. In Iceland, patience is strength. The snowy owl doesn't spend what it can't get back. Hunger doesn't drive it. It shapes it. His body is made for silence and waiting, and in that prolonged stillness he blends into the landscape that sustains him. Time passes silently. Only the faint pulse of the air announces that something is changing, a vibration that travels from the ground and breaks the calm. The owl opens its wings and drops from the branch. It descends effortlessly, following the sound that echoes beneath the snow. The impact is clean. The snow opens and closes instantly, swallowing the movement. Beneath the white blanket, a field mouse lies motionless. The owl perches on a low rock. Its talons grip the prey firmly as its head turns in a precise, almost ritualistic gesture. There is no noise, only the crunch of ice under its weight and the faint rustling of feathers as it moves. With a swift movement, it swallows the small body whole. The hunt ends without violence, with the same calm with which it began. The air flows again. The snow falls in fine threads and the forest regains its breath. Among the trees, the darkness begins to recede. A pale glow appears from behind the mountains and tints the ice blue. The owl takes flight for the last time before dawn. It flies away into the heights where day has not yet arrived. In Iceland, the night ends without a sound, only the order that repeats itself over and over, while each creature fulfills its role and life continues in silence. Dawn arrives silently. A faint light filters through the clouds and touches the surface of the ice with a blue glow. The tundra, motionless for months, begins to exhale the vapor trapped under the frost. Small trickles of water seep through the cracks, and the air, though still sharp, smells different. More humid, more alive. In Iceland, winter doesn't retreat abruptly. It dissolves slowly, leaving behind hardened ground and a sky that hasn't yet decided whether to let spring in. But for some animals, that uncertain change is enough. In the eastern highlands, the shadows begin to move. From a distance, they look like dark patches advancing across the white landscape. Dozens of bodies glide along with a measured rhythm, barely interrupted by the panting of exertion. They are reindeer. After months sheltered in the higher elevations, they descend towards the valleys where the ice begins to give way and lichens reappear beneath the surface. Their march is patient. No one leads or gives orders, but everyone seems to know the way. The youngest cubs stay in the center of the group, protected by the adult bodies that flank them. The males clear the way, breaking through the hardened snow with their hooves. The sound is rhythmic, almost hypnotic, a dry crunch that accompanies each step. The wind blows from the north, heavy with salt. It carries with it the scent of the distant sea, but also the memory of the storm. Even so, the flock continues. In their world, there is no doubt, only constant progress guided by a memory that is transmitted without words. Each reindeer carries an invisible map within its body. Its muscles, taut and strong, retain knowledge of the terrain, safe passages, frozen rivers that can be crossed, and gorges where the ice opens without warning. There is no error or improvisation. The route has been traveled by generations, marked by instinct. At the front of the group, a male stands out. His silhouette is etched against the grey sky. His thick, dark fur reflects a metallic sheen in the light. The antlers, broad and perfectly symmetrical, curve back with natural elegance. Every movement exudes control. It doesn't need to impose itself. Its mere presence organizes the herd. He's not the fastest or the most aggressive, but something older sets him apart: experience. He's crossed these valleys before. He knows when the ice is breaking, when the wind is heralding a snowfall. His gaze seems to measure the horizon, evaluating each slope before deciding on the next step. The reindeer move forward for hours. The terrain changes slowly. The snow mixes with patches of moss and remnants of dry grass. The temperature rises just a few degrees, enough for the air to lose its sharpness. The landscape opens up, and the midday light falls on the slopes of eastern Iceland. Here, on the fringes of the Snæfell Plateau, winter seems a distant memory. The flocks find what they were looking for, a valley where the earth breathes again. The first shy flowers peek out among the stones, and the wind carries the scent of the thaw. The group disperses. The females begin to graze, burying their snouts in the damp grass. The young rest under the watchful eye of the older females, while some males guard the edges of the valley. The calm that follows is not rest, but a pause, a brief equilibrium between hunger and exertion. The dominant male stays apart, on a small rise from where he observes the group. He's not searching for food. His gaze scans the horizon, alert to any movement. His body shows the fatigue of the journey, but also a contained tension, as if he were expecting something inevitable. The air grows lighter and the silence deepens. In the distance, the sky heralds the change. Low, dense clouds drift slowly in from the west. Among them, an orange light breaks the grey uniformity. The day begins to die, and the entire valley is tinged with copper. The reindeer huddle together, responding to instinct. The warmth of their collective bodies dispels the afternoon chill. From above, the valley resembles a living mass, swaying to the rhythm of the wind, but that stillness is deceptive. Among the males, something is beginning to tense up. A different glint shines in the alpha's eyes, a barely perceptible warning. The scent of the females, mingled with that of damp moss, heralds what is to come. In the calm of the valley, under the first night of the thaw, nature prepares for the conflict that it repeats every year. The migration has ended, but the real challenge is just beginning. What happens when the natural order meets the ambition of force? The air has changed. It no longer smells of ice or stale wind. It smells of life. For the reindeer herd, this moment marks the beginning of a new tension. The long marches are behind them. Now the air vibrates with a different urgency. The rut has begun. For weeks the bodies have silently prepared. The females, more restless, begin to gather. Its smell changes, becoming denser, more persistent, carried by the wind. The males perceive it with a clarity that transcends sight. They raise their heads, savor the air, and that gesture, the curled upper lip, the half-closed eyes, announces that something within them has awakened. The valley, once calm, is filled with new sounds. They are not soft calls or subtle songs. They are roars, deep, expansive, vibrant. Each male roars into the distance as if he could measure his power by the strength of the echo. It's not just a display of strength, but a message. In the open tundra, sound travels far. Every roar marks an invisible boundary, a warning to whoever listens. There is an owner here. Bodies tense up, necks lift. Some begin to scrape the ground with their front hooves, raising fragments of damp earth. Near their eyes, tiny glands release a pungent aroma that permeates the air. Reindeer mark rocks, branches, even the ground itself. Wherever a male passes, he leaves his signature, a chemical reminder of his presence. In the middle of the valley, the old male stands out from the rest. He doesn't need to assert himself. He does it effortlessly. His broad, sturdy body moves with the confidence of one who has survived too many winters. The fur, dark and thick, retains the harsh tone of the cold, and its antlers, curved and symmetrical, seem to have grown along with the mountain. Around him, a dozen females gather calmly. They graze, rest, gently brush against each other's flanks. They follow him not with devotion, but with recognition. He has proven his worth more times than they can remember. He has guided entire flocks across the ice, withstood hunger and wind, and repelled those who sought to take this territory from him. Every now and then it raises its head, savors the air, and roars. The sound is not a challenge, but an assertion. It marks the extent of its power, the echo of its dominion. The females raise their eyes, and their attention is enough for him to lower his head again, satisfied. For a few hours the calm holds, but in Iceland equilibrium never lasts too long. From the edges of the valley, where the terrain undulates towards the hills, a young figure observes. It is a light-coloured male, thinner, with horns that do not yet reach the width of the veterans. He has travelled the same route as the others, but he has done so from the margins, always behind, always watching. Now the scent of the group reaches him. The pheromones, the sweat, the damp grass, everything propels him forward, and youth, as always, knows no caution. The young man takes a few steps forward, his head down, savouring the air. The females notice it first, raise their faces, and look at him silently. The wind changes direction, and with it the scent reaches the alpha male. The old man immediately raises his head. His gaze hardens. He doesn't need to see the intruder to understand what's happening. He takes a step forward, snorts loudly, and the sound cuts through the air. Then he lets out a deep, drawn-out roar that makes the ground vibrate. The young man stops. For a moment he seems to hesitate. Instinct tells him to back away, but something holds him back. He observes the females. Some look at him curiously, others simply return to grazing. The silence between them becomes unbearable. The alpha strikes the ground with a hoof. The echo mingles with his ragged breathing. He takes another step forward, lowering his head, displaying the full extent of his antlers. The young man doesn't move away. He straightens his neck, and from his throat comes a shorter, sharper, but firm bellow. It's a new sound in the valley, the harbinger of a will that has yet to know fear. The females separate. The group spreads out, leaving an empty space between them. The wind blows from the north, carrying the old snow that comes loose from the rocks. Neither of them moves. The alpha keeps his gaze fixed, calculating. He doesn't rush. He knows that the first move could decide everything. But the young man doesn't give in either. His body vibrates, tense, on the verge of impulse. For a few seconds, the entire valley seems to stand still. Only the distant crackle of melting ice can be heard. Then the old man lowers his head slightly. The young man imitates him. The distance between them is minimal. There are no further warnings possible. The air holds the electricity before the collision. In both their eyes shines the same reflection, the recognition of the risk and the certainty that one of them will never occupy this place again. The first movement is not seen, it is felt. A shiver runs through the icy air before the antlers lock. The sound of the impact resounds like a dry, metallic echo spreading through the valley. Two bodies collide with the force of necessity. The young man pushes first. He throws his weight forward with force, his hooves sinking into the soft frost. His breathing quickens instantly, and his breath mingles with the snow falling from the ground. The old man, on the other hand, remains firm. His muscles do not tremble, his body does not move more than necessary. Resist, wait, measure. For the first few seconds, the confrontation seems even. They both turn, push each other, turn again with tense necks, and their antlers vibrate from the pressure. The friction generates a deep, continuous sound, like an ancient groan of ice. The females observe from a distance. No one intervenes. In these rituals, hierarchy is imposed not through violence, but through balance. It is not about destroying, but about remembering order. The young man forces his position, tries to turn quickly, but the terrain works against him. The snow gives way. His hind leg slips and his momentum dissipates. The old man seizes the opportunity. He twists his neck with precision, digs his antlers in lower, and pushes with a weight that seems to come from the ground itself. The young man takes a step back, then another. The air fills with the sound of his breathing. Steam envelops him. He tries again to make the desperate push, but the old man anticipates it. He doesn't respond with brute force, but with control. Every movement is measured, as if he knew the choreography before starting. The battle doesn't last long. In minutes, the result becomes clear. The young man is panting, his muscles rigid, his flanks covered in cold sweat. The alpha, although tired, keeps his head held high and his gaze fixed. The young man's last attempt ends in failure. The antlers separate with a soft crack and silence falls. The alpha takes a step forward and lets out a short, sharp bellow. It needs no more. The message has been delivered. The defeated man lowers his head. He doesn't flee immediately. He looks at the ground, breathes slowly, and turns around slowly. No one watches him. In the flock, the females return to grazing, bodies relax, and balance is restored. In the Icelandic tundra, defeat is not punished. It is assimilated. It is part of the cycle, of the learning process that repeats the same script every season. The young man walks away, still panting. His breath dissolves in the air, and his steps lead him toward the edge of the valley. There's no resentment in his departure, only weariness. As you climb higher, the terrain changes. The grass disappears and snow covers everything again. On the hillsides, amidst shadows and wind, other scattered figures appear. Solitary males, younger, some with broken antlers, others still growing. They all share the same fate, to observe from a distance. The light fades over the valley and the cold takes hold of the plain. On the horizon, the tundra becomes a single color and night falls silently. Dawn breaks over the high plateau like a slow breath. Night retreats silently, leaving behind a low mist that barely allows one to distinguish the scattered silhouettes of solitary males. The wind has calmed down, but the cold is still there, suspended in the air, watchful. The young reindeer remains still, with its head down, chewing on hardened moss remains. Around him, a dozen figures emerge from the reflections of the ice. Neither of them gets too close. They maintain a precise, instinctive, learned distance between them. In these groups, there are no defined hierarchies, nor are there fights for leadership. Everyone knows their place, their role. They're called the loners, males who, due to age, injuries, or simple chance, have been left out of the mating cycle. Some are still too young to compete. Others, old or exhausted by successive winters, retire to conserve what remains of their strength. His group is not a flock in the strict sense, but a truce. There are no bellows, no clash of antlers. The only things that break the silence are the harsh sound of dry grass being pulled up and the crunch of ice under their feet. Unlike dominant herds, here there are no tensions or females to defend. Only bodies moving together for convenience, seeking food and shared warmth. Sometimes they rest, forming a semicircle. Other times they scatter across the plain, but they always keep their gaze fixed on the horizon. In this fragile balance, each individual contributes something: vigilance, companionship, warmth. It is a tacit alliance among the defeated, where prudence is worth more than force. The young man observes. He no longer roars or tries to impose his will. He has understood, without knowing it, the first lesson of exile, that patience is also a form of power. Its antlers, still covered in frost, show fresh scars. Cold air seeps into its nostrils, forcing it to breathe slowly. Over the next few days, the group moves to lower-lying areas where the wind exposes small patches of moss. Every find is a victory. Their bodies, thin and covered in patchy fur, seem to bear the marks of centuries of adaptation. The cold bites, but they have learned to endure it. Their muscles ache, but they keep moving forward. Sometimes when the wind shifts, the young goat raises its head and sniffs. The air carries scents it recognizes. Those of the main herd, the females, the alpha male. It also carries the distant echo of bellowing. His body reacts, but he doesn't move. Not yet. Among solitary people, there are unwritten rules. They don't confront each other because the effort would be pointless. They don't compete either. Here, everyone is equal in their defeat and their hope. On the fringes of power, strength is measured by the ability to wait for the right moment. The group's equilibrium depends on that calm. If one person becomes impatient or tries to impose their will, the others distance themselves, leaving the misfit to wear themselves out alone. There are no punishments, only distances. The young man learns from this silent logic. He learns to read the terrain, to gauge the wind, to conserve energy. Day by day, his body changes. He gains stamina, regains weight, and strengthens his legs. Instinct, which once drove him to defy, now teaches him to calculate. Because here, every mistake is costly. The snow can hide an abyss, and one wrong step can mean being trapped up to your waist, vulnerable to the cold or to predators. Solitary birds have no shepherds or fixed routes. They move with the wind, following invisible lines that lead them to small food stores. Their existence is minimal but precise, and yet a silent certainty beats between them. The balance is not permanent. In the next cycle, when the snow melts and the winds shift, some of them will return to the valley to try again. The broken antlers will grow back. The wounds will heal beneath the new fur. Today's defeat is only a pause. One morning the sun peeks through the low clouds and tinges the ice with gold. The young man stands, more upright than before. The wind blows from the valley, carrying a familiar scent. Among the aromas of moss and frost, there is something more, the sweet and warm trail of the females. The others don't notice or prefer to ignore it. He, on the other hand, raises his head. The mist covers the hills, but he knows where to look. He takes a few steps, stopping every now and then, attentive to the movement of the wind. He doesn't have a plan, just a slight intuition. Descend slowly, skirting the hillside. The sounds of the valley grow louder, the murmur of grazing reindeer, the crunch of hooves on the wet snow. In the distance, the main herd moves as a single living mass. Among the shadows, the old alpha continues to watch. The young man stops, hidden among rock formations. He doesn't intend to approach too closely, but neither does he retreat. There's something about that boundary that draws him in. Perhaps it's the memory of the group or the echo of the place he believes he belongs to. The wind changes again. It carries with it a different, unfamiliar scent. It's not moss or reindeer. It's something denser, metallic, heavy with a sense of warning. The young man raises his head, and for a moment the dawn seems to stand still. In the distance, something moves through the fog. It belongs neither to the flock nor to the cold. It is a presence the valley hadn't felt in weeks. The silence stretches out, anticipating what is to come. The danger has not yet arrived, but the air already foretells it. Dawn hangs suspended in a pale light. The low mist transforms the edges of the landscape into shapeless shadows. Between lines of rock and patches of wet snow, an elongated figure appears, advancing unhurriedly. It makes no noise because it knows the terrain. It doesn't feel its way because it has already measured it with the wind. A lone wolf crosses the plain with the economy of one who saves every move for the exact moment. His breath comes in brief bursts. His paws tread where the snow holds. His head lowered, he traces a straight path toward the heart of the valley. The flock perceives the change as a somber note that shatters the background harmony. The females raise their necks, and the steam from their mouths mingles with the mist. The young stay in the center out of sheer habit and memory of previous winters. The alpha male doesn't rush. He straightens his back. He digs his hooves into the still icy ground. His gaze doesn't seek the wolf. It seeks the space that separates the females from danger. He knows that here strength isn't wasted on running. He knows that the one who waits best usually survives. The young exile is closer than the flock imagines. The mist envelops him like a new skin. He comes down from the hillside along a trail of fresh moss. He still feels the accumulated fatigue. He still remembers the sharp blow that sent him to the sidelines. But something in the air changes his pulse in an instant. It's not the smell of rain. It's not the salt of the wind. It's something else, a sign that draws an invisible line between him and danger. The wolf advances, its gaze fixed on a point that is not yet a body. It learns from the smallest details. A sunken edge of snow might be a recent footstep. A wisp of denser vapor might be a fearful breath. Choose the diagonal paths where the wind favors their scent. Erase their trail with short movements. Measure the straggling females that are foraging along the edges. Calculate how many seconds separate you from a clean attempt. The young man stops his descent in the blink of an eye. His body completes the decision before his mind does. It doesn't bellow, it doesn't warn. It takes 3 firm steps towards the open plain and stands halfway between the wolf and the first line of the flock. From that position, the wind hits him head-on and brings him all the history he needs. Damp mud, alien breath, hunger, the weak hour of dawn. The alpha senses the movement but doesn't block it. It doesn't yet recognize the one that was expelled. It only sees a body occupying the correct space. His immobility is not doubt. It is calculation. If the wolf advances along the flank of the mist, there will be a precise second where defense will be worth more than the blow. If the wolf hesitates, time will side with the flock. In Iceland, even time chooses sides. The predator stops a few meters from the young reindeer. It doesn't need to bare its teeth. The weight of its gaze on the reindeer's front legs is enough. He moves one foot. He moves the other. The ice creaks with a thin sound. The young man doesn't look away. He takes a deep breath to expand his chest and stands as if his muscles were roots. He has no antlers to fight head-on. He has no size to intimidate. He has another weapon, determination. The wind does its work. The mist opens into folds and multiplies silhouettes. Behind the young man, the mass of the flock becomes an irregular wall that seems more compact than it is. The females approach out of a protective instinct. The young barely peek out between 2 broad bellies. The scene the wolf sees is not a misplaced individual. It is a collective defense that suddenly seems wider and deeper. 1 step. The wolf lowers its neck. 1 more step. The young man doesn't give an inch. When the predator tries to smell the fear, it finds no cracks. It finds only a steady breathing rhythm that adjusts to the cold. The reindeer's eyes don't seek to impose themselves. They seek to assert a boundary. The message is simple. This far. The tension doesn't erupt in noise. It erupts in stillness. The entire valley seems to contract. The alpha maintains the line with a slight turn that aligns 3 females at a tight angle. There is no visible sign, but there is an order that is established like a geometry. The wolf perceives it as a power dynamic that no longer favors him. He doesn't know how many might arrive if they try a race. He doesn't know how much firm ice lies beneath his paws. He knows something different. The cost is high for a lone hunter. Then the intruder hesitates. He barely turns his head back along his own path and calculates his return. He looks again at the young man who hasn't changed his position since taking the first step. That stillness weighs heavier on him than a roar. That stillness tells him there is no easy breakthrough, that the element of surprise has been lost, that the advantage is no longer in his favor. He steps back a meter without lowering his head. He moves 2 meters further away with a movement that betrays no surrender. He's still assessing whether a detour along the edge might offer a chance. The wind responds first. It brings him a whiff of the scent of bodies together. It brings him the muffled sound of hooves settling into place. It brings him the certainty that he would not hunt prey. I would chase a conflict. In a winter that still bites at the edge of spring, the price of a mistake can be a week of hunger. He turns around with a clean gesture. He walks leisurely into the fog. Each step erases his silhouette. He doesn't run because no one is chasing him. He doesn't look back because his nose has already told him the end. It vanishes into the mist just as it arrived, silent as ice cracking from within. The young man doesn't celebrate. He maintains his posture until the wind blows back a breath devoid of metal. Only then does he lower his head. His body trembles from the shock that comes too late. Breathing returns to a rhythm that the cold allows. Behind him, the flock doesn't move immediately. Calm takes time to settle where just a minute ago there was a living frontier. The alpha observes the one who stood in the middle of the plain. There is no explicit recognition. There is no punishment. There is a pause where order breathes and decides. The females stare at the line that remained between their bodies and the spot where the fog sealed off the predator. In that space, a small but decisive change is felt. The sun rises higher in the sky, the mist dissipates, and the valley breathes. The wind, once tense, now moves without urgency, lifting thin strands of snow over the hardened ground. The flock returns to its rhythm. The females lower their heads, the young seek the shadows of the older bodies, and the sounds of grazing return like an ancient pulse that orders the landscape. But nothing has truly returned to the way it was before. Among the silent crowd, a body occupies a place that was previously forbidden to it. The young reindeer remains still for a few moments, as if still measuring the distance between what was and what has just happened. There is no celebration. Nature grants no triumphs, only continuities. Even so, something has changed. Those who once ignored it now acknowledge it, even if only out of the corner of their eye. The alpha male watches him from the hillside. There is no threat in his posture, only a watchful stillness. They both know that the hierarchy is not nullified, but it can shift. There is no debt between them, only the balance that is renewed each time life tests its own structure. One of the females approaches. It's not curiosity or empathy. It's an instinctive reading of the new order. She sniffs his neck, brushes her snout against his side, and returns to the group. That gesture is enough. It is the silent permission of the flock. The young man reacts with the same composure with which he faced the predator. He advances slowly, measuring each step without challenging, without retreating. The air has changed temperature. The day progresses, and with it, bodies readjust. The sunlight tints their backs a dull golden color. The traces of the night fade. The threat is gone, but the memory of the danger remains, a lesson that needs no words. In Iceland, strength isn't always measured in horns or weight. Sometimes it's measured in the precise moment a creature chooses not to back down. There is no drama in that act, only the adaptation that continues its course. Here, bravery is not a gesture, it is another survival strategy. The young man joins the collective movement. He neither leads nor follows, he accompanies. His tired body finds a natural place among the others. The flock becomes a single organism again, moving in a common direction, a set of breaths that mark the passage of time on the snow. The sun reaches its highest point and the air becomes clear, almost still. From a distance, the figures merge into a single living stain that advances across the plateau. The gaze rises to the horizon, and the landscape reveals its true scale, a white and blue ocean where every living form asserts its place in the world. In these lands, redemption is not announced. It is demonstrated. Balance doesn't reward, it only adjusts. And the cold, which makes everything equal, remembers what was defended. The young reindeer continues its march among its own kind. With each step, the ice gives way only slightly, leaving marks that the wind will soon erase. As evening falls over the valley, the flock moves away, enveloped in the glow of the sunset. Little by little, the light fades. Iceland is once again left alone, facing its own essence, a land divided between ice and fire. In that impossible balance, life is sustained like a held breath. But How can a territory resist when its foundations are fire and its skin is ice? The ground breathes. On the eastern plains, steam rises from cracks, ascending like ghostly columns that dissolve into the frigid air. There is no complete silence. Beneath the earth, something stirs, something simmers. Iceland is a living organism, a body where the elements clash and at the same time need each other. At first glance, it all seems like a geological mistake. More than 30 active volcanic systems, and yet glaciers cover almost a tenth of the island, a landscape that should destroy itself but doesn't. Because here, fire and ice don't compete, they negotiate. The magma that accumulates in the depths heats the waters that run underground, and these thermal currents rise like invisible arteries, preventing the island from freezing completely. At the same time, glaciers cool the air, condense moisture, and feed rivers that extinguish the excesses of fire. What elsewhere would be destruction, here is balance. Geologists say Iceland exists by accident, but no accident lasts for millions of years. Fire holds the ground, ice preserves the shape. One provides movement, the other provides restraint. It is an ancient pact made under pressure that is still renewed every day. In some valleys, the land presents a visible paradox. Ice covers the rock, but just below, the heat melts tunnels, creating steam caves where the air trembles. There, in that margin of the impossible, life thrives. The humblest plants are the first to benefit. Bright green mosses cover the hot rocks, absorbing the moisture left behind by the escaping steam. Then the lichens appear, clinging even to volcanic glass. They are the silent colonizers, transforming stone into soil. Where there is warmth, insects arrive, small dark bodies, invisible to almost everyone, that seek out microclimates where winter is not lethal. They are the first links in a chain that withstands temperature changes. But they are not the only ones. In the warm crevices, puffins dig their burrows. These birds, which spend much of the year at sea, return to the coasts in summer and nest on cliffs where the ground is kept soft by geothermal heat. There they raise their chicks, protected from the wind and ice. Further inland in the thermal lagoons you can see grey seals. They remain still on the icy edges, resting amidst the steam and warm water. For them, these places are both refuge and border. The heat from the subsoil keeps the waters open that elsewhere would have frozen completely. And further north in the tundra, the Arctic fox traverses the terrain with slow steps, following the invisible trail of heat. In the lava fields, where the ground still exhales steam, it digs deep burrows. There it raises its young, taking advantage of a temperature that can mean the difference between life and death. Each species, each body seems to have found its exact place within the chaos. Life neither rebels against fire nor flees from ice. It adapts to both. During the coldest months, the air can reach impossible temperatures, and yet beneath the surface, the water boils. Contrast doesn't destroy balance, it sustains it. It is this constant tension that makes Iceland one of the few regions on the planet where creation and ruin occur simultaneously. Every so often, the Earth reminds us of its power. An eruption blankets the valleys in ash, melts glaciers, and unleashes rivers of mud and rock. But even then, life returns. Nutrients from the magma feed new plants. Melting ice fertilizes the soil. In Iceland, nothing truly dies, it simply changes shape. And as the steam rises, the ice spreads, and the Atlantic winds sweep across the surface, the cycle continues. It is a country that belongs neither entirely to land nor to sea, a territory suspended between calm and eruption. Fire gives it movement, ice gives it memory. And between the two, the creatures have learned to exist without choosing sides. But if fire and ice can coexist, what other life forms can emerge at the boundary between these two worlds? The sky begins to turn a pale grey, and the steam rising from the earth mingles with the morning mist. The ice gleams with bluish tones, and beneath it, the heat moves, invisible. At this boundary between fire and cold, something stirs. A flock of birds awakens on the smoking rocks. They are not fleeing the heat, they are seeking it. They are three-toed gulls, old inhabitants of the Icelandic cliffs, capable of nesting where the ground still breathes steam. At first glance, their choice seems like a mistake, a narrow, brittle shelf, tempered by the heat emanating from the earth. But that same heat keeps the ice at bay, prevents the wind from freezing the eggs, and turns an impossible place into the perfect refuge. For centuries, these birds have repeated the same strategy. Year after year, they return to the same rocks, even when the earth trembles and the air smells of sulfur. They choose risk because it guarantees life. Each nest, built with seaweed, mud, and feathers, clings to the edge of the abyss as a declaration of permanence. Scientists say these colonies have learned to read the temperature of the rock with instinctive accuracy. They can distinguish the steam that announces a certain crack from that which precedes an eruption. At first glance, they look like thousands of white spots stuck to the cliff, but each one belongs to a couple fiercely defending their tiny space. Amid the squawks and flapping wings, the scene seems chaotic. Yet there is order. Each gull recognizes the voice of its mate and its chicks. Noise doesn't confuse, it organizes. The warmest shelves are the most contested. There, the eggs hatch first and the chicks grow faster. The heat that rises from the ground keeps them active even when the north wind freezes the air. In an environment where the cold dictates everything, this advantage can mean the difference between life and silence. When the hatchlings emerge from their shells, they are greeted by steam. Their first contact with the world is not the freezing air, but a warm breath rising from the bowels of the earth. At that moment, the impossible happens. Life is born on fire. But this miracle comes at a high price. Cracks in the ground open without warning, smoke thickens, and the adults must balance on unstable ledges to feed their chicks. Sometimes the wind tears a nest away, or ash covers the cliff for days. When that happens, there is no mourning or abandonment, only the repetition of the cycle. The following year, the same birds will return to the same place, even though the rock has changed shape. The ancestors of these gulls also sought warmth. Millions of years ago, other feathered creatures approached the fumaroles of early Earth. Some were theropod dinosaurs, the first to incubate eggs with the help of volcanic heat. That ancient alliance between fire and life was never completely broken. It survives today in these colonies that still choose the hot earth as their cradle. When the wind picks up, the entire colony shakes as a single mass. Thousands of wings beat against the sky, creating a white storm that blends in with the steam. At the foot of the cliff, the sea strikes the stone with a deep cadence, and the air is filled with echoes, the roar of the Atlantic, the whistling of the steam, the cries of the birds. Everything seems chaotic, but it's a precise choreography. Every time the ground shakes or the air thickens, the entire colony rises into the air. For a few seconds it disappears into the sky until the tremor subsides. Then they descend again, each finding its exact nest among thousands without making a single mistake. Fire can alter the rock, but not the memory of its inhabitants. As the days lengthen and summer reaches its peak, young people take their first leap of faith. Some fall directly into the sea, others reach the air and are lost among the currents. That leap encapsulates the entire history of Iceland, life advancing on the edge of destruction. The cliff is enveloped in steam and wings. Fire burns beneath the surface. Ice endures above. Between them, another generation learns to fly. Because here, where the earth breathes fire, every birth is a test of faith in the impossible. And in the heart of Iceland, life doesn't fear the abyss. It uses it as a starting point. The air is once again the protagonist. It blows from the North Sea and passes through the glaciers, brushing against the fumaroles and the valleys where the ice never completely disappears. Iceland awakens under a pale light, and in that calm is revealed what the land has taught for centuries, that life does not impose itself, it adapts. From above, the landscape seems motionless, but beneath that stillness, the world pulsates. The steam rising from the hot rock, the ice breathing above the ocean, and the creatures that between these two extremes have learned to maintain their balance. On the white plains of the north, the Arctic fox follows its invisible trail. Nothing in their environment is predictable. The wind changes, the snow covers, the footprints disappear. and yet it moves with precision. Every step is a calculated decision. Its body, reduced to a minimum, is a map of responses to adversity. Small ears, a short snout, fur so dense it seems to absorb the light. She is not afraid of emptiness or silence. Her true strength is intuition, that ability to read her surroundings with an accuracy that no other being could match. Further east, the Icelandic reindeer move through the valleys. The group moves slowly, calmly, leaving a faint trail in the frost behind them. Their bodies brush against each other, align and accompany one another. No one imposes their will, no one leads. Each animal knows the rhythm of the other, and that shared rhythm is what keeps them alive. They don't confront the mountain, they negotiate it. They don't defy winter, they cross it. Their strength lies not in their muscles or their antlers, but in the constancy with which they advance one stride after another, even when the wind takes their breath away. In the western forests, the snowy owl rests on a bare branch. Its eyes remain open, motionless, attentive to the vibrations of the ground. It knows that day will bring movement, and with it food. There's no rush, because in Iceland nothing happens all at once. Time is measured by patience. And on the southern cliffs, where the sea crashes against the stone, the three-toed gulls repeat the ancient gesture of each dawn. The heat that rises from the depths keeps their nests intact. Fire, which in other places would be destruction, here protects. Each of these creatures has found its place between opposites. Cold does not defeat them. Heat does not consume them. They have learned to live with both, and in that coexistence their existence is defined. The ice sparkles, the steam rises, and amidst this contradiction, everything falls into place. There is no struggle, only understanding. Fire feeds the ice tempers the fire. And life, that seemingly fragile force, is what balances both extremes. Iceland doesn't teach abundance, it teaches moderation. Here, to resist is not to impose oneself, but to adapt without breaking. Every species, every form, every breath is proof of that wisdom. The wind rises once more. The fox retreats to its den. The reindeer cross the valley, seeking the shadows the sun casts on the snow. The owl turns its head west, where the day begins to fade, and the constant steam continues to rise from the rock, a reminder that beneath the calm, the fire never ceases to burn. On this island, suspended between two worlds, life does not shy away from danger. It transforms it into a refuge. And as long as the ice breathes and the earth retains its burning pulse, there will always be a way to continue living here, where the impossible becomes commonplace. In Iceland, resistance is not an act, it is a way of being.